Hello and welcome back to Module 3. We're going to look at standing now and alignment standing. And I've got a couple of really nice foot exercises to help you connect more with your feet. Our feet have 250 to 300,000 nerve endings in each one. They're the place where we balance from, they're the place where we take off from. They're when we're walking, they're just super important to your well-being. And now there's lots more research indicating that the health of your feet can really affect your pelvic floor. Everything is so connected. So even there's a connection between your big toe and your transverse abdominis muscle, one of your deep alignment muscles. There's a connection between your toes and your sacral ligament, which surrounds the sacrum, the posterior end of your pelvis. So there's a lot going on down here. And also your sciatic nerve ends up in your heel. So it's important to keep your feet super healthy and try and spread your toes as much as you can. So here's the exercise I'm going to teach you just as a bit of fun at the beginning of this part of Module 3. So we're going to spread our toes as far away from each other as possible. I'm going to start with one foot. So just start with one foot, pick a foot. First thing you're going to do is try and get your big toe and your little toe as far away from each other as you can. Then what we're going to do is keep all the other toes down and we're going to lift just our big toe up. We're lifting it up towards ourselves and in towards the opposite foot and away from us. We're not lifting it up and towards the foot that it comes from. Then I'm going to place my big toe down, obeying the same things, thinking about it stretching away, in towards the other foot and pressing down. I'm going to lift all the other toes up. Then I'm going to put the other toes down and lift the toe up again. And put the big toe down, lift the other toes up. Put the other toes down, lift the big toe up. Put the big toe down, lift the other toes up. And I'm going to keep going like this. Just maybe do 10, yeah? And really trying to alternate. Good. So then I'm going to move to the other foot, do the same thing. So again, spreading my toes out, I'm going to lift the big toe up. Again, trying to stop it from deviating towards its foot itself. What happens is when your big toe does this and starts to cross over into the path of the other toes, it creates a space in the bone. And your bone, your body then creates more bone, which can in turn move into being bunions and things like that. So I'm going to lift my big toe up. I'm going to place my big toe down and lift all my other toes up. And then I'm going to put my other toes down, lift my big toe up, and put my big toe down and lift my other toes up. Little toe, all my toes down, big toe up, big toe down, big toe up, little toes down. Good. And keep going for about 10 or until they're knackered, a bit tired. Okay. Now I'm just going to try a toe tap. So I'm going to lift them all up. I'm going to tap my big toe down, then lift all my toes up, tap my little toe down. Toes up, big toe, toes up, little toe, toes up, big toe, toes up, little toe, toes up, big toe, toes up, little toe. Good. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going big toe, toes up, big toe down, big toe up, little toe down, toes up, big toe down, toe up, little toe down, toes up, big toe down, toes up, little toe down, toes up. These are exercises that you can do anywhere, and the more mobile your feet, the more functional your entire body will become. The last one we're going to do as a little warm-up for our feet is a back of the foot stretch. So this area here, this dorsiflexion, this dorsal bit of your foot, the back of your foot, if it becomes really tight, it can start to pull. If all the fascia and stuff becomes tight here, it starts to pull on these toes. And if it pulls on these toes, it starts to pull them in towards each other. And this can create things like hammer toe as well. And these are all going to affect your alignment, your balance, and your general well-being. So there's a simple little exercise for this. So all that we're going to do is you can hold a wall for support or a chair if you need it. You're going to place the back of your foot on the floor. You're going to make sure your heel is lined up with your knees so it's not dropping out to the side either side. And you're going to hold it and breathe. If this is incredibly tight, you need to do it a bit more often and just start to slowly allow it to stretch off. So we're going to hold that just for a few breaths. And then we're going to swap and do the other side. So exactly the same on the other side. Perfect. Good. So now we've warmed our feet up, we're going to work up from our feet all the way up towards our heads. So we're going to start with our feet hip distance apart. We don't want our feet so wide apart that we're like a cowboy. And we don't want them so narrow that we've not got much of a balance centre. We want to essentially line our body up again. So we want our feet underneath our hips. So we want them hip distance apart. That's 2 of your fists between your feet or a length of your hand. So that's a little bit narrow there. Okay, so now I've done that, I want to also make sure my feet are in a straight line. because I want my hip, all my muscles to actually line up properly so they're not stretched in different directions. So I want to make sure that my toes aren't pointing in like pigeon-toed and they're not pointing out the way either, that they are in a straight line. Then we're moving up. So we're going to make sure that our knees are nice and soft. Now the reason for this as well is especially with hypermobility, and I see a lot of women who are hypermobile. Connective tissue disorders seem to loan themselves to prolapse and incontinence symptoms post-baby. So what happens when you lock your knees out? When you lock your knees out, this happens to the rest of your body. So you can see now how totally out of alignment I am. My shoulders have pulled back, my bottom's pushed out, and my rib cage is pointed out towards the front. But if I just soften my knees, it allows everything to kind of come back into line. So we're going to, and that's more accentuated if you're hypermobile and your knees pop out behind. So we want to keep this back of the knees nice and soft. It's called your popliteal. It's a really cool name. So we've got our feet hip distance apart. We spread our toes out. Knees are nice and soft. We're going to come up to our pelvis now. Remember when we were on the floor and we did the alignment on the floor, we made sure that we had this kind of, we had our pubic bone and our SAS bones in a nice straight line, and the kind of your pubic bone and your belly button lined up. So what we're going to do here is the same thing. We're going to put our fingertips on our pubic bone, the heel of our hands on our SAS bone, and we want to make sure it's in a nice, they're in a nice straight line with each other. Almost makes a love heart. It's pretty cool. Then what we're going to do is what happens if that's not quite right. So if you find that if you do this and you find that your fingers are further forward than the heel of your hands, what you've done is you've posteriorly tilted your pelvis. I'll really over-exaggerate it for you. So posterior tilt here. What this generally means, and who generally does this, is that you've clenched your buttocks. So with pelvic floor dysfunction, your body will try and help you stabilize in whatever way it can. So for a lot of people, and a lot of women, what happens is they start to clench their glutes all the time. So they clench their glutes really, really tight, and that pulls their pelvis back the way, pushes their pubic bone out towards the front, and pulls you into really quite shocking alignment. What happens as well with this is that because these glutes are on almost all the time, when they get tired, so they're not always going to be as functional as we want them to be. And your glutes are your pelvic floor's best friends forever. And we need them to be there to help support our pelvic floor when we ask for it. So when we're standing, when you put the kettle on, or when you go to cook tea, or find a moment in the day, or when you're standing brushing your teeth, make sure that your glutes are switched off. So they're not firing, so they're nice and relaxed. Again, so that's if we find that when we put our hands here, our fingertips are in front of our heel of our hands. So we want to bring that back the way by relaxing our glutes. If you find that when you come into this position that your fingertips are behind, your fingers are in front or behind, what happens is that quite often our body will start to stabilize from somewhere else. So what a lot of women do is they clench from the top. So they clench from the top like this, and this puts their pelvis into a really odd position. So what we want to do is we want to release the top of your body, give it a shake off. Good. Find that neutral pelvis. Relax your glutes. The next thing now is to find the position for your rib cage. Now remember when we were on the floor, I said that what happens quite often during when we're pregnant is that our rib cage starts to thrust forward to make room for the baby to come out the front. And what happens postnatally is that we never bring it back again. So we get stuck with this really high arch in our back, which creates loads of pressure on our spine, which in turn creates pain in our spine, lower back pain. So what we want to do is the same as we did on the floor. We want to bring our rib cage back over our pelvis. So we're going to place our fingertips in the bottom of our thumbs in the bottom of our rib cage, fingertips on top of our ASS bone, and just line them back up again. Good. You can also place your hands around your rib cage and just slide them down, and you should be able to easily slide between one and the other. If I've thrust forward, I'd have to be like I was sliding round the corner to get here. So we want to make sure everything is just nicely lined up. Okay, shoulders. We want to make sure that our shoulders are relaxed, so we're not pulling them back, because this creates tension across the back of our back into the top of our back area. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull our shoulders up towards our ears and then just drop them down. Do it again. Pull it up, hold it up for a minute, and drop them down. Finally, we want to make sure that our head is placed nicely on top of our neck, so that we're not got this leaning forward position that we get from texting, driving, etc. We want to imagine, therefore, that we're listening to a conversation behind us. We're in a busy restaurant and we're trying to listen to conversation without the people knowing that we're listening to the conversation. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to pull it back so that your chin comes in towards your chest. You want to keep your eyes gazing towards the horizon, and it's just a very gentle drawing back. You should feel a little bit of light tension up the back of your neck, no more. Good. So we've done feet, hip distance apart, nice and spread out, supporting you. Soft knees, so we're not hyperextending behind us. Neutral pelvis, rib cage stacked, shoulders relaxed, listening to that conversation, eye line horizontal. The next and last two parts of this puzzle, we're going to think about dropping our coccyx towards the floor at the same time as lengthening through the crown of our head. So it's as if somebody's got a string at the bottom of our spine and is pulling one way and somebody's pulling the other way. So we're lengthening all the way through those vertebrae, just giving them a bit more space. Excellent. So this is our nice standing alignment. To recap, we've looked at supine alignment, lying flat on the floor, with our knees bent and thinking about the pelvic clock and the lordosis in our spine, so thinking about our spaces and masses. We've looked at sitting, and we've looked at how important it is for you to sit on your sits bones and not roll back into your sacrum because of the irritation that can create within your bladder and the movement, especially early postnatally when the ligaments are still quite relaxed with the relaxant through your system. We've looked at making sure that your shoulders are balanced equally on top of your pelvis. We've looked at soft knees, we've looked at the importance for your feet, and we've looked at the importance of your head position. It's also super important to keep your jaw as relaxed as possible as well when we're doing all the stuff in hypopressives. And I'll tell you why. So if, for example, now, if you think about tightening your pelvic floor, so just do a Kegel right now. So try and do one of those Kegels or a pelvic floor lift, and then feel what happens to your tongue. So if you do a Kegel, what you will feel happening is that your tongue will draw back the way. You feel it? So there's a connection between what goes on in your jaw and what goes on in your pelvic floor. So here's a little life hack. If you have to pick up something heavy, say you're a toddler, and you have pelvic floor dysfunction and you're worried about your pelvis or your prolapse, what you can do is you can take the tip of your tongue and push it to the roof of your mouth. And that helps to stabilize inside your pelvis. It helps to tighten everything a little bit. But when we're doing these exercises, and when you're doing anything to do with your pelvic floor where we want it to have a reflexive movement, which we'll be doing later on in the next modules, we want to make sure this is super, super relaxed. I hope you've enjoyed this module, and I hope you've got some pointers to take away from it. I look forward to seeing you in the next module, where we'll be looking at lateral breath. Take care.